Dolphin this time is a rather unusual storm hitting Zhejiang province twice.
The typhoon is downgraded, but doesn't mean the danger is over. Living with the risk is already a reality, a new normal.
The new cities that are coming up in China are taking this into consideration. If you look at the Xiong'an region, the new development area where they're taking a lot of environmental safeguards before they build the city itself.
The Chat Lounge. Chat Lounge.
Chat Lounge.
The Chat Lounge unpacks views and opinions on hot issues in a more casual way.
Typhoon Dolphin has brought record-breaking rainfall to part of eastern and central China. Mass evacuations, transport disruptions, and the lingering threat of flooding have made the immediate impact clear, but the bigger questions go far beyond this single typhoon. Can artificial intelligence and drones transform disaster response from reaction to anticipation? How can fast-growing coastal cities continue to develop while learning to live with the risk? And most importantly, what can we learn from Typhoon Dolphin to build stronger, more resilient coastal cities in an era of extreme weather? Welcome to Chat Lounge. I'm Yawen. Joining us to explore these questions and more are Changhua, President of the Global Climate Academy and Chair of the Governing Council at the Asia-Pacific Water Forum, Dr. Shujie, Chongqing Professor of Economics at Chongqing University, Yasiru Ranaraja, Founding Director of Belt and Road Initiative Sri Lanka. Welcome to the chat. Changhua, let's start with the storm itself. Typhoon Dolphin is the strongest typhoon to hit China this year. It developed near the international date line and has traveled more than 6,000 kilometers across the ocean before reaching China's eastern coast. What made this typhoon unusual, and why was its track so difficult to predict early on?
Sure. I think we've all been learning through the Typhoon Dolphin, and it's unique in many, many ways, but at least from three perspectives. The first actually is really about where it's formed and how far actually it traveled. It developed unusually far off in the Pacific and then traveled thousands of kilometers actually toward East Asia. So it was exposed to very different ocean and atmospheric conditions along the way. Secondly, it's more like its internal structure kept changing. We saw multiple eye wall placement cycles. When that happens, the storm can weaken, reorganize, and then strengthen again. So you're not dealing with a very stable system. And thirdly, the atmosphere around it actually was changing at the same time. A typhoon doesn't move on a fixed track or fixed railway track. Its movement depends heavily on the surrounding pressure systems and steering winds. So early in the storm's life, relatively small differences in those large-scale atmospheric conditions can produce quite different tracks several days later. So the issue is more like a typhoon doesn't really follow a fixed track, rather it's constantly interacting with a changing atmosphere. That is why it proves so unique and very unstable.
Dr. Yao, so Changhua just talked about basic characteristics of this Typhoon Dolphin. Then from what people have experienced on the ground, we can tell that this typhoon has triggered mass evacuation, especially in coastal cities, has caused travel disruptions, thousands of flight cancellations, and serious flooding risks across mainly eastern and central China. So from an economic and social perspective, what stands out most to you about the impact of dolphin? And what does the scale of disruption tell us about how vulnerable modern cities have become to extreme weather like this typhoon?
Yeah, Dolphin this time is a rather unusual storm hitting Zhejiang province twice. Normally, it would only hit once, but it now hit twice. And secondly, it covers a very wide regions, not only Zhejiang, Jiangsu, Shanghai, Anhui, and many inland provinces, which are also involved after the typhoon hit the mainland. And also the rainstorm affected quite a very vast territory of the Chinese, inland area. Probably 1/3 of the land area in China is affected by the heavy storm. And the destruction is very obvious. It's not only the coastal city, many houses have been, ripped off. The agricultural crops have been, some places have been destroyed. Lots of risk in the inland area, the mountain area, the transportation have been interrupted, not only the air transport, but also the land area. The low railway have been hit. And many cities are emerged into the deep waters, which have, disrupted the ordinary, life. Luckily, because the government have, activated the very comprehensive system to rescue the people and the particular places we are at the front risk. And there's limited casualty of people, unlike many other, storm areas that we see in different parts of the world and in the parts of China. This time, I think the government, central as well as local, have done a great job to make sure that the casualty have been limited to an absolute minimum. But economy-wise, I think the destruction for the later, reconstruction, I think it will cost millions of yuan to rebuild. So this is certainly a very unexpected and large-scale natural risk presented for the economy.
Dr. Yao, you talk about some responses from the local and central level. So could you elaborate more about how has China responded so far? And what's your assessment of the overall response from Chinese government?
Well, the responses have been presented in different ways. The pre-warning, the forecast of how the dolphin and also the rainstorm is going to affect in different parts of the area. So the forecast is gradual and also very tightly connected to the movement of the dolphin, which have been prescribed by my college. It's very unpredictable as the atmosphere and also the wind force have been forcing the dolphin to move into different direction to cover different area. So this presents a very important task for the local observatory, station, and also for the surveillance system at different level and different stations. And the second, prevention is to evacuate the peoples which are at risk to make sure life is the most stressless things in this kind of situation. So people's life has become the top priority. They have to be evacuated to a safe place. And secondly, the transportation system and also the reservoir, water have to let out first, and they give lots of room to store the rainstorm, which would increase the water level in different area. And also the risking, the landfall risking area, there are some sorts of stoppage and also prevention to make sure that the potential risk being propagated to the general public, the social communities, and the local government, the villages, and so on and so forth. So to make sure that the property, the people, and also the infrastructure are as much protected as possible to minimize the potential destruction.
Do you see any room for the authorities to improve?
To me, there are at least three different aspects that should be strengthened in the future. The first aspect is that the forecasting and the prevention system in the Pacific region, the Pacific Ocean, they have to get much longer because this time the dolphin have trouble about 15 days far away from outside the Pacific region into the Pacific region. So in the Pacific Ocean, I think the weather forecasting authority have to have more signals and piglets to warn the potential coming of the typhoon. And secondly, I think the urban drainage system, particularly in the inland area, which have not been very frequently open to the risk of this kind of heavy rainfall in a short time. At this time, I think you can see that most of the inland areas, they are not very well prepared. We have very fast urban development, but the local, underground drainage is not very prepared for this kind. I think this will be a future major work, particularly in the inland area, especially the agricultural area, the reservoir, the low landmark, landfall, risky area. Everything have to prepare for these kinds of unforeseen, highly risky event happening.
The Chat Lounge. The Chat Lounge unpacks views and opinions on hot issues in a more casual way.
Changhua, how about you? What areas do you think still need to be strengthened or could have been better?
I echo very, very strongly. Professor Yao just made some very important assessment and the key points there already. On the positive side, definitely the Typhoon Dolphin has proved to be a stress testing opportunity for China's, we call it, emergency response system. And if you look into that space, actually, particularly the early warning, the observation, forecasting, early warning, as well as the large-scale mobilization. I think throughout this last couple of weeks in particular, China at national level, at the regional level, have definitely made a strong case that we are equipped with the capabilities and deployment seems to be working in most cases. Now, I wouldn't really see what's really totally inadequate. I think it's a learning process for all. We are already reshaping, resetting the narrative, the language, talking about extreme weather events, talking about adaptive resilience, anticipatory resilience. So we are shifting into a new landscape actually to understand the extreme weather events like Typhoon Dolphin and many other events. In the meantime, I'm trying to build into that system, tap into technology capability, knowledge, data, information, so that we become more resilient, intelligent, and very, very importantly, actually, I think to address sort of emerging impacts, what we call compound or cascading risks, as Professor Yao mentioned in many, many ways early on. It's impacting, because we're so connected, all the systems actually, including meteorological, physical, as well as the infrastructure, you name it actually. So we need to figure out actually how to learn quickly through that process. And so that when we design for next round of capabilities, actually, particularly from resilience perspective, we'll be able to become stronger. That doesn't mean actually we're not going to fail in the process. I think, it's hard to prevent, eliminate typhoons or disasters there. It's really difficult to build all the possible infrastructures actually to become so totally zero impact at all. So living with the risk is already a reality, a new normal. More importantly, actually, we need to figure out how to really sort of take actions so that we'll be able to become resilient, so that, yes, there will be some failure, but we can fail safely. But in the meantime, actually, we can recover quickly as well, so that we'll be able to maintain the essential critical functionalities of services of the society, but learning through that process so that we'll be able to enhance our resilience down the road. I think that is and will continue to be a very important part of the learning process. On one side, we need to become more risk resilient. In the meantime, we need to understand the risk, the impacts there as well, so that we turn that sort of information knowledge into decision-making and turn the decision-making into actions. I think that's the most critical learning throughout the Dolphin this time.
Living with the risk, that's a very good point. And I want to hear the international perspective from Yasiru here. So Yasiru, looking at this Typhoon Dolphin from a broader international perspective, both Changhua and Dr. Yao just talk about how we can live with the risk and do prevention in advance. So what makes the typhoon response truly effective, especially for developing countries? We know most of the time they have much more limited resources. So what are the most important things developing countries can do before the storm arrives?
Yeah, Yawen, thank you for having me. It's definitely a very interesting topic, and I've opened up to many new ideas that was discussed here. So, to answer your question, one of the main problems for developing countries when it comes to disaster situations is the problem of communication between the intergovernmental bodies, that is, city governments, provincial governments, counties, and so on. So what I saw in China is that co-communication between the counties, cities, villages, and provincial and up to the state level. They had organizing model of communication, which led to all branches of government and other departments, so that early warning systems were much more effective and impactful. For example, the information the meteorological department sent, it goes to all the branches of the society in those cities and communities. So that is very important to get educated about the disaster which is going to happen. So people could prepare, and they know the size and scale of the disaster which is coming to China. So this is one of the issues that most developing countries do have, because sometimes people won't take it seriously. Sometimes they take it more seriously, and there is a lack of proper command, centralized distribution of information during such events. So this I saw very effectively done in China during the Dolphin typhoon, and also early warning systems worked very well. Even all branches of society was reading charts, reading diagrams of how the trajectories of this storm is coming inside the country. So that shows us that the society have become more educated in understanding how a storm is formed and how is travel within and inside the country and cities. So this could lead to less impacts and recover more resources before the typhoon even happened. So according to the World Meteorological Organization, early warning systems can prevent up to 40% of the damage it can cause to the community. So I think China models that they use to integrate these intergovernmental city institutional branches into one commanding body is very impactful. And I think it should be a good study model for the developing countries as well.
So let's talk about the current condition of the Typhoon Dolphin, Changhua. So Typhoon Dolphin weakened after making landfall, but the rain did not simply stop. For instance, here in Beijing, we have seen that the capital city issued an orange rainstorm warning, its second highest alert level because of typhoon's lingering effects. And the storm is also expected to bring significant rainfall to its nearby regions like Tianjin, Hebei, and even to Liaoning starting Thursday. So why can a weakening typhoon still produce dangerous rainfall and flooding, say hundreds or even thousands kilometers inland?
Sure. I think what we are learning, particularly through the Typhoon Dolphin this time. So when a typhoon weakens, and the wind can weaken very, very fast, but that doesn't mean the moisture will disappear immediately. The storm probably may lose the access to the ocean energy and its organized sort of circulation, but it can still carry a huge amount of tropical moisture inland. That's exactly what has happened then. When that moisture interacts with the other weather systems along the way, like different weather patterns at different region, mountains and atmospheric circulation can get very heavy rainfall well away from the original coastal landfall. That's basically, as I said, what we've witnessed and what we've learned. So basically say, yes, the typhoon is downgraded, but doesn't mean the danger is over, because that's more like meaning the nature of the danger has changed. So the wind risk may be, decreasing, but the rainfall flooding and the landfall's risk can remain very serious. That means the shifting geography of risks. That is why Beijing is experiencing what has been experiencing, the downfalls, and triggered actually the emergency response system with the shutdown infrastructure, facilities, transport, you name it actually. So what we've learned through that process, basically typhoon may disappear from the weather map, but the water doesn't. So that means actually we need to learn deeply into the shifting geography of risk because of those compounding factors and cascading risks actually working within the system, working with each other.
Changhua, I know recently you wrote an article about this. And in your article, you also mentioned that China has been using AI technology to forecast extreme weather like this one. What can these technologies actually do in a real disaster that conventional systems cannot do as quickly or as effectively? And how are these technologies helping detect risks earlier, respond faster, and save lives?
Sure. Thank you for reading my article. But I have to make a point very, very clearly. AI is not a magic solution. It's a part of very complicated, sophisticated technology infrastructure there. So in real life, we learned already. And the real value of AI is that it can help us bring together huge amounts of information data at a much faster pace. For instance, a satellite actually can tell us what is happening from above. Radar, actually, remote sensing tells us where the rain is moving. Ground sensors can tell us what is happening locally. Hydrological data tells about rivers and flooding. Infrastructure data can tell us actually what might be vulnerable. AI actually can increasingly to help connect all of that and turning that into, say, decision capability. As I said, now the reason why we have a much stronger capability in terms of forecasting, early warning capability, mostly because, can be attributed actually to this kind of integrated digital or technology infrastructure that's basically empowering the decision making as well as actually in triggering, mobilizing actions as well. So one thing, we started to learn through, major events like Typhoon Dolphin is that somehow we are no longer just following where the typhoon is going. But more and more importantly, we need to understand what will the typhoon do when it gets here. Look at what has been mobilized so far through the dolphin response. Actually, we started to understand, what road will be flooded, which part of the railways probably need to be closed, which power lines actually could be vulnerable, which neighborhood actually might be isolated. And even, looking into rescue teams and rescue equipment, where should they go first? So that's very, very important in a way. This is a transformative in a way. It's about impact-based forecasting. We can only do that with technology capabilities like AI, and that's integrating everything else together. So that's why we are more like we are predicting the consequences so that we'll be able to mobilize our actions more effectively.
Dr. Yao, so Changhua just talked about how technology could help make disaster response faster by monitoring it. But from an economic perspective, what is the value of getting 1 more hour or even a few more hours of reliable warning? What can the city actually save with that extra time?
Well, I think in this kind of situation, because the typhoon destructive force is so peaceful, so it's not only 1 hour, I think even 1 minute, a few seconds, sometimes could save life, could save a lot of life and a lot of property. So timing is certainly very important. For example, like evacuation, 1 hour could evacuate thousands of people to safety place. So our technology is very important in this case. Technology actually accelerates our decision-making process. If we can forecast the risk with AI and other digital technology, and also the meteorological infrastructure which already put in place, they could give a very precise and very prompt pre-warning up and how this typhoon is going to move in, what are the forces, and where is the place that we have to put in effort to rescue people and property, and where to stop the functioning of some normal operation network, and so on and so forth. So 1 hour, 2 hours, is very vital, very critical. In terms of technology and investment for the meteorological system, I think we need to see how quickly and to accelerate the precision and also the speed of how to make a decision, work to be done in the next few minutes, not only just 1 hour, next few minutes, work should be done. And this is very important about technology nowadays.
Is there a price on prevention? Because we cannot tell like how much work or how much investment the government have put into the prevention of extreme weather until nothing happened, right? Then how should government compare that cost with the cost of recovery?
Yeah, this is a very critical economy issue. I mean, we certainly have to figure the cost and the benefit. But the problem is that the cost of the destruction sometimes could be uncalculatable, especially when you involve life, involve the vital facility infrastructure, which could cause uncalculatable amounts of money. So investment is not just to prevent one particular risk. At this time, the dolphin risk, but there will be more dolphin, be more other typhoon and other natural disasters taking place at any time, given such a large country like China. So the government, especially the central government, the regional government, they shouldn't calculate the short-term cost of the prevention system. They should calculate the long-term and also the larger scale of prevention system. So investment is basically based on, number one, the affordability, and number two is the available technology and also the future technology, rather than calculating because this cost is going to be about 100 million yuan, so we shouldn't invest more than 100 million yuan. It's not like a normal fiscal calculation in a normal project.
Because it involves lives. So there is no price on that, right?
Yeah.
Yasiru, so early warning technology is becoming more sophisticated. We all know that, but many developing countries still struggle with basic weather observation, with communication and evacuation systems. So in your view, what is the biggest gap today between having a warning and actually being able to act on that warning?
Yes, so one of the reasons many countries struggle is, although they have the warning, the actions won't come, or the decision making is poor. So this is a very important area that most countries should focus on, because as we know, in the recent years, the disasters have been continuously coming to all regions. And according to the IPCC reports over the last 30 odd years, they were predicting these outcomes as well. So I think what needs to be is political decisions or community-wise leadership decisions are very important to communicate between the community and to educate them how to evacuate and to give them other benefits or other resources that they need to go to safe places. So, for example, in a country like Sri Lanka, where we had the Ditwa cyclone, I think end of last year, which had a big impact on the country's economy as well, because although they were the early warnings came, although they were prepared very well, or the policy works were also in place, yet the decision making was a bit lacking during the time. So according to the World Bank, during the Ditwa, the Sri Lankan economy was cost about 4 billion on physical damages that would account for 4% of the country's GDP as well. So that's a big impact to the country. If they could have taken the correct decisions and follow the warnings and educate the communities properly, I think a lot of resources, lives would have been saved. So these are all not mistakes. Although these are mistakes, these are also learning points that should be shared with other countries in order to be prepared to not only save lives, which is the most important, while also being prepared so that the damage would be very less and most of the infrastructure and the economy which can be saved through that as well.
We know you're the founding director of the Belt and Road Initiative Sri Lanka. So you're very familiar with the BRI and also South-South cooperation. So where can international cooperation make the biggest difference here?
Definitely for disaster or these related issues, let's say in a broader term, climate change, the international cooperations is very much important to share the information that each country has, because these disasters not only impact one country, it would impact the global economy as well. For example, the typhoons which came to China impacted one of the core economic hubs in China, Shanghai, Zhejiang. These house the world's most busiest ports. So if there are any disturbance in these areas, it would impact other countries' economies as well in terms of putting a lot of people into poverty. So these ports or regions not only transport the furnitures or food, but also very sensitive commodities as medicine and energy, which is very important for global citizens. So this is why the global community should come together to understand, to share, and to give concessional fundings to uplift those infrastructure to help during this disaster. This is a very strong argument that has been there in this disaster or the climate change regime for a long time. So I think now is the time mainly the developed countries should come forward and share their technology, their assistance in these impacts as well.
You're listening to Chat Lounge. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we will zoom out from Typhoon Dolphin and ask a bigger question. Are extreme weather risks fundamentally changing? And if they are, can our coastal cities keep growing in the same way? Or do we need to rethink how we build, where we build, and what resilience really means? Stay with us.
I was born on the 17th of November.
Delve into a world of words with Books and Beyond, a podcast made especially for audiobook lovers.
I came into the world as the youngest of 5
I
children.
wondered what Her Majesty would be like.
Fie upon you, limpid one. Why have you taken...
Immerse yourself in gripping stories and timeless classics from the comfort of your own personal space.
Sun Tzu underlined 3 points on the context game
There was
initiative.
no better wine, and not to mention the...
Whether you're a bookworm or a casual listener, our carefully curated selection of audiobooks will transport you to new worlds and stir your imagination. Subscribe to Books and Beyond and start your audiobook adventure now on radio.cgtn.com or your favorite podcast app.
Welcome back to Chat Lounge. I'm Yawen. Let's continue our discussion. Changhua, you have worked on climate and sustainability for decades. So when you compare today's extreme weather with what we saw, say, a few decades ago, what has fundamentally changed? Are we seeing stronger storms, heavier rainfall, longer-lasting events, or perhaps more importantly, more complex combinations of risks?
Yeah, thank you for this question, because this is very important, very basic. Actually, we need to understand what's changing at this moment. I think a few things have been changing and shifting. Firstly, actually, if you look at the climate change, the climate baseline is changing. If you look at the greenhouse gases concentrations in the atmosphere compared to a decade ago, probably at around below 400 parts per billion. Now it's at above 420 parts per billion, and that's very, very important. So shifting line. If you look at actually the warming baseline, as we've been talking about in recent years, we are already living. I think starting 2024. We are already living in this 1.5 degrees Celsius warming sort of world already. So when the climate baseline changes, that basically requires the changing assumptions baselines of how we plan our cities, plan our infrastructure, even plan the finance investment as well. So that's the first change. Secondly, extreme events increasingly interact with one another. Scientific research is telling us, it's presenting a very convincing story these days, actually. We call it a cascading or compounding, actually, risks there. Rainfall, flooding, heat waves, storm surges, landslides, power failures, you name it. They're all interconnected and also interacting with each other. And thirdly, actually, sometimes overlooked by many, we have massive increased our exposure. Using Typhoon Dolphin as an example, of course, it landed twice, actually, along the coast in Zhejiang province, hit the coastal region, and then, of course, traveled further inland. This happens to be the region in China that has the most, highly concentrated people, buildings, infrastructure, economic activities, you name it. Meaning, large part of China's economic value has been created here. Now, with such scale, large scale, impactful extreme event, you could imagine actually, the impact, negative impact on actually the economic system, infrastructure system, social system here as well. I think those are the three representing changes we started to look more carefully. We need to study them very carefully. So the issue actually, it's basically, it's not as what's the worst rainfall we've seen, actually, particularly putting into the urban planning landscape there. But more and more importantly, we need to ask, so what could happen that we haven't really seen before? This is a very different planning mindset. It doesn't mean actually throwing away all the historical data, information, knowledge there, but it does mean actually we need to treat history not as a ceiling of possibilities, but only as a one maybe important dimension of reference. But more and more importantly, we need to take into consideration what's going to happen in the future, based on the best scientific capability, knowledge, data, information there into the urban planning process, into the infrastructure investment process there as well. I think that's going to be, we're already in it, that continue to be mainstream down the road.
Dr. Yao, so Changhua just mentioned these Typhoon Dolphin have seriously affected China's coastal provinces and cities, which are among the country's biggest economic engines, China's wealthy eastern coast in the Yangtze River Delta. And there are many ports, factories, tourism, also dense urban populations are concentrated along the coast. So are we seeing a point where unmanaged or still working to managed climate risks start eating into the very economic gains that coastal development has created?
Well, I think it's a fairly sophisticated situation when we're talking about this natural disaster and natural risk. Changhua just mentioned that compared to the past, the weather condition, the climate change, have brought about some more radical risk like this kind of dolphin and maybe other natural event. And on the other point is that China have been building up very quickly the mega cities such as Shanghai and the surrounding region, and they are much more infrastructure building and more people clustered together. So on the one hand, you have more natural risk. On the other hand, you have more people and more property and infrastructure which are exposed to this kinds of risk. But on the other hand, I think we also learn to live with the risk because our construction, for example, like the Shanghai Tower, this time is one of the tallest building in China. Actually, the technology proved to be highly effective. The wind is about 12, 13 scale strong, but the building is moving forward and backward and is safe. So that means that we're already building into the gene of the city to make sure that every building, every infrastructure, they are able to tolerate these kinds of stress tests. Then the natural risk, not only the windstorm, the extreme rainfall, pouring in a short time, and the flooding. And also the transportation system, which would be effectively managed to cut off and stop to save life. So we already building into the system for this, and we are investing heavily into the metropolitan system, the drainage system, and the government. Recently this year, in April, just announced to build up the so-called 6 network. One of the network is the power, the water system, and also the computing, system, the data system, and also the city underground drainage. We know that we are exposed to this, but we are already prepared how to build the system to become more risk versatile. So that the country, including the Yangtze River Delta, the most prosperous area, that how we built up this resilience to cope with the risk.
Yasiru, this is the core question for many fast-growing cities. Like Dr. Yao and Changhua just talked about, we're learning how to develop those cities well adapted to the extreme weather conditions. In your view, how to balance economic development with disaster risks? And are there, say, smart ways to keep developing the coast without putting more people, infrastructure, assets in harm's way?
Not necessarily. I don't think stop or reducing the development of coast areas is a solution for the problem, because disasters can happen in various ways, not only through extreme weather, but landslides and heat waves or you name it. So it should be the infrastructure should come in another metric to be resilient for these disasters. So that sort of standardization should go into when you're building the infrastructure itself. And of course, if you cut down these regions, especially the coastal region, which are normally known for higher economic output, and a lot of livelihoods of citizens or populations are depending on these ecosystems, fisheries or ports or trade-related areas. So those are the core economic hubs that need to be resilient during such disasters. So which we see in some parts of China working very well, where they have managed, as the professor highlighted before, most of the infrastructure that coming up now take into consideration of how to mitigate these damages during such disasters. So I believe protecting economic assets has always been is becoming centralized to the upcoming reality of the world that we are seeing now. That could actually help the economy and also the people's attitude towards meeting such disasters in the future. Because in the beginning of our discussion, you mentioned that we are not able to stop these disasters one way or another, but only thing we can do is how to be resilient during these disasters. So development and the disaster risk should go hand in hand. And the policymakers and the funding that goes through it should take into consideration all these facts before they coming to such decisions or put money on these such areas.
So you're suggesting that climate risk should become part of the economic calculation before a major development project is approved.
The new cities that are coming up in China are taking this into consideration. If you look at the Xiong'an region, the new development area, where they're taking a lot of environmental safeguards before they build the city itself, with flooding and various other early warning systems. So this is definitely we are seeing in China that is happening, which should be studied among the other regions and other countries as well.
The Chat Lounge.
The Chat Lounge unpacks views and opinions on hot issues in a more casual way.
Changhua, you mentioned resilient cities a few times in our program. Could you help us understand, what would a truly resilient city actually look like on the ground? If you could take a coastal Chinese city, for example, not today, maybe say 5 or 10 years from now.
Okay. I think resilience by design will be one of the defining features of the future cities, coastal cities. And so building infrastructure, buildings, the different power system, energy system, water system, you name it, they will be designed and built for actually heat, extreme rainfall, flooding, and stronger winds, you name it. And so in many, many ways, you probably will start to see a more combined actually system. For instance, we're going to see wetlands, ecological buffers, restored waterways, and engineered actually protection there. And if you look at within the city, and we're going to experience more smarter drainage, water storage system, as well as the flood control systems there. And of course, underneath all this, actually, we're going to see more intelligent digital nervous system. So we're going to experience sensors actually monitoring like rainfall, rivers, drainage, traffic, electricity, critical infrastructure, and also even look at future emerging emergency management centers. Actually, they're not going to look like a weather map. Right. And but rather it will put questions like if another 100 or 150 millimeters of rainfall here in the next 6 hours, what breaks first? So that's becoming the stronger demonstration of the resilience capability, impact driven, and the consequences of forecasting intelligence there as well. So I think those are probably taking into consideration all the technology capability, engineering capability. You need a governance there as well, institutions, but really also down to city level, government level, business level, community level, household level, neighborhood level, as well as actually coming down to individual level there as well. So putting all those dimensions actually together into the system, that's going to be the probably most resilient coastal city in the coming decade.
Very well said. Dr. Yao, we talk about resilience as a cost, but could it actually become an economic advantage? Like, could the city that's better prepared for extreme weather become more attractive to investors, businesses, and talent, in your view?
Yes, I think we just take this natural disaster, natural risk as an example to portray the future development of cities. Actually, in some part of the city in China, especially the old towns, we didn't forecast these kinds of extreme weather. So when the weather actually hit the area, that we have some sort of very chaotic situation and very weak response to the situation, and people's lives suddenly have been heavily disrupted. The modern part of the city actually have been coping very well. In every city, China have an old town and a new town. The new town turned out to be much more resilient. So my view is that if you build a city which are highly resilient to any kinds of external shock, in this time, the typhoon, the rainfall, and maybe next time there will be others. So a well-prepared, well-built city, not only the building, the basic building, the dwellers of people to live, but also the key infrastructure like the water, the supply system of the gas, electricity, transport. It is a very comprehensive lifestyle at the moment for a modern city. So if we calculate all these kinds of facility, how they can risk averse these kinds of potential external shock and aesthetic shock like the dolphin, then the city would attract more investment and people would live there feeling more safely. I think this is concept lesson and also the concept future planning of future and economic development for different locality, different city, whether it's large or small. Smaller town, inland town, they are less prepared, and this time they will hit actually harder than the coastal area. So that means that even in the inland, the remote area, the mountainous areas and the villages, that we have to take this into account. to make China a much more modernized society and community. They can take all kinds of risks into account, and people will be safely protected against all unexpected events like this kind of dolphin.
So, please go ahead.
Yawen, let me try to add another dimension, which is a business case, because we'll be repeating this economic case for resilience actually a few times already. Besides what Professor Yao mentioned about the city sort of a case there, let me really bring in this emerging very strong case actually for business. These days actually, particularly for largest public listed companies in particular, are all required actually to include climate risk, material risk, and opportunity assessment into the corporate sustainability reporting, right? And so that's particular under the ISSB International Standardized, Sustainability Standardization sort of reporting framework there already. Now, for business, actually, this is very practical, down to earth. So how a business operates, particularly for large companies there. So if you look at their supply chains, if you look at the asset facilities, factories, facilities, if you look at, their staffs, their logistics. So somehow I think the business case maybe makes an even stronger case in terms of why it's so obvious. There is the economic case actually for investing more in resilience, because when the supply chain disrupted, when the logistics disrupted, when the companies cannot deliver their products to their customers, and when the facility, whatever, mining actually being flooded, that means costs, literally. So investing in resilience to become more resilient, to be more preventive, that's a strong business case, a financial case, because that's going to be clearly reflected in corporate, actually, the CapEx, OpEx, the balance sheet there as well. So I don't think we need to argue to disagree. I don't think there's much disagreement in terms of why we need to invest in resilience and whether there is an economic case or not. The answer is absolutely there is. What we need to do at this moment is that the current actually financing system, for instance, we're very good at pricing what we're going to build, right? We probably have not been very good at actually pricing prevention risk as well as resilience into the financial systems there. And that's definitely going to be another major trend, much accelerated development actually in the coming decade.
Exactly. Sooner the city adapts to climate resilience, it could eventually become part of the city's competitiveness, because they know when extreme weather arrived, the city is well prepared to those extreme conditions. Yasiru, what's your take on what just Dr. Yao and Changhua said? In your view, what can we learn from Typhoon Dolphin to build stronger, more resilient coastal cities in an area of extreme weather?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all the points the two speakers were highlighting here, and especially in terms of the corporations which are going IPO. They are also focusing on the sustainable reporting to have this climate resilient outlook in their company portfolio. So it's a good direction where companies taking into account the realities that we are facing, not only the economic benefits or maximization of their own company's financial portfolio, but common benefit to the communities or CSR related emphasis in the future is also good. So going back to your point, the cities which are in the coastal regions are much more knowledgeable about the risks that they could face in the future, especially in the economies which are booming in Asia. And if you take to account the Asian region is the most populated, most dense region in the world. So going forward, this would be one of the core focus on many governments when they are moving their cities or when they start rebuilding their infrastructure, taking into account how to be resilient and how to keep the community safe during such disasters. So overall, I think we will be facing such disasters in the future compared to past. As per my reading, the amounts of natural disasters which are happening in recent years has been increased compared to past. That could also be because of reporting limitations in the past as well. However, we have seen momentum in such areas. So I believe the knowledge that we can get through different countries or different governments, how they prepare and how they recover during such disasters would be very useful. And such dialogues and knowledge to other countries are also very important so that they could strengthen their local communities as well.
So perhaps the lesson we could learn from this Typhoon Dolphin is that we cannot design cities where risk disappears, but we can design cities that see risk earlier and absorb shocks better and recover faster and learn from every event. So that's how we can live in with the risk in the future. And that brings us to the end of this session. Many thanks to Wu Changhua, President of the Global Climate Academy and Chair of the Governing Council at the Asia Pacific Water Forum, Dr. Shujie, Chongqing Professor of Economics at Chongqing University, Yasiru Ranaraja, Founding Director of Belt and Road Initiative Sri Lanka. To share your thoughts on this topic, just drop us a line at radio@cgtn.com. I'm Yawen. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great weekend.